anybody walks into the room at annual conference, many rooms, the welcoming nature of our members is absolutely terrific. You have that opportunity to talk with all of these different folks, and guess what? They want to talk to you too, even if they haven't met you before.
Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
We're going to get into the NAFTZ. All right, so we're going to get into some folks here to the show. All right, Jeff Tafel, who is the president of the NAFTZ organization. We have Shannon and Shannon, you are the elected chair, and we have somebody new on the show today that is somebody that I have a whole lot of respect for and is a great guy to be around, is Trey Boring. Trey leads up his own consulting business on foreign trade zones and has his hand in a lot of different things. And this guy's going to forget more than I'm going to get to learn when it comes to not only foreign trade zones.
Thanks for having us.
Good morning.
All right. So we are going to be talking about the NAFTZ. And Jeff, I guess let's start with you initially on where and when is it?
Oh, I get the easy stuff. All right. When is September 8th through the 11th of this year. And I'm very excited to say that we will be in New Orleans, right on Canal Street at the Sheraton in New Orleans this September.
All right, September and New Orleans, that's a great time. So with that, that's great. Any particular highlights for that for right now? What's your main theme this year?
Well, our theme this year is just FTZs and all that jazz. Of course, we're in New Orleans and very excited about that. And in fact, we do a 5K walk run at the beginning of our conference every year. And speaking of music, our charity this year is even related to some great efforts that are being done for the local community through music. And so we're looking forward to benefiting that part of the New Orleans community when we get down there. But the rest of the conference focused on FTZs as always, and all those other things that go into it, import and export, what's happening in that space right now. And it's why we wanted to bring Trey on this particular episode, because he's the current co-chair of our program committee, and he's been chair and co-chair of the program committee in the past. So we were thinking maybe Trey would be able to give us some extra insights into what we have planned on the schedule for this year. We've got some really, really great programming planned for New Orleans.
Anything that Trey Boring is involved in and organizing is worth checking out, because I'm going to tell you, this guy, I'm telling you, he's great. So Trey, I've set it up for you here, buddy. What do you got on the program?
That, as always, our team that works with programming, the staff, the executive committee, our goal every year and at every event is to ensure that the attendee, number one, gets their money's worth. I mean, we all understand that with budgeting and the way companies are working, that it takes quite a bit for you to be able to jump in, pay for an event, pay for travel, and have your company go ahead and sanction it. And, with that, we try to make sure that the educational offering is something that crosses a wide array of attendees. So we always have our award-winning, and I will say it that way because I gave the award, but our award-winning fundamentals, which is probably the very best, precursor education to FTZ. So, Andy, you mentioned people who are interested in foreign trade zones. Even if you're thinking, I need to do a study and find out if this is going to work for my company, come and go to the fundamentals. You're going to find out the basic background that you need to understand how the program works and how the program functions. And we also have several advanced topics where we have operators of FTZs who are going to walk you through, scenarios and different elements of the program. And we try to do it where we get membership involved, and you're not just listening to a consultant tell you, right? I mean, Shannon is a great attorney. I do okay as a consultant, but her and I sitting up teaching every class is kind of dull. So we strive very hard to get your peers up there training you. I mean, that's really what we've done. And we've got quite a few very, very good topics.
There are two things that really for the audience to understand. One is that I think one of the big misnomers about the NAFTZ is the fact that it's people who are only entrenched in the zone world. And that's really not the case anymore. Our membership spans, we're close to 800 members strong. And our membership spans virtually every industry you can think of. So we have everyone from a foreign trade zone administrator all the way up to a C-suite that attends the conferences. And I think the reason for that is, Trey talked about, the value for the dollar and being able to go to conferences and being able to understand what's going on in the world of trade. Obviously, zones are first and foremost our bread and butter, but we also have to keep abreast of the other issues that are going on. So as part of our conference, we pair up with our CBP partners. We pair up with our Department of Commerce partners. So we have folks from the local ports that'll also be giving insight into some issues that are going on. We have folks coming down from the highest levels of CBP headquarters that are going to be engaging with our membership to talk about things like the hot button issues, right? So you're talking about forced labor. You're talking about steel and aluminum. You're talking about exports. So it's certainly, the Foreign Trade Zone program is an important tool, which is one of the reasons our membership continues to grow. It's important to the U.S. and to the U.S. economy, but it's also for those folks who are engaged in trade, whether, like Trey said, they're just trying to learn about foreign trade zones. Fundamentals program is there. If they want a bit more deep dive, they have the ability to come in and hear about what's going on in the hot button trade issues. And we also have our economic development side, right? That we cannot forget those grantees that hold the grants of authority for the foreign trade zones. So looking at how to market their zones and the economic opportunities for them is another big part of our program.
Well, one of the things you're hitting on something that for our listeners, if you are looking at trying for, to spark some economic development in a particular community, one of the things that probably would be wise is for some local officials, mayors or city council people or county folks or even state levels to attend this kind of conference. Would that be something worthwhile of their time to see what's going on in cause and effect, I guess, of whatever, when you're trying to talk and get somebody up to speed and what they can play, the part they can play, in other words, on, is stimulating the local economy. Would that be a wise move?
Yeah, no, I would say that most grantees are made up of, boards of people that are probably departments of other, governmental, they're a subset of other governmental agencies. And anybody that sits on those types of boards, county commissioners, county judges here in Texas, mayors, city council folks, the director of the airport, those that are, sort of the leaders of those organizations, really we find when they do show up, that zone and that community benefits because their education should not, like a company, right? When you get a C-suite person, an executive show up, it helps the compliance director in your company. I mean, they understand what you do for a living. All of a sudden, that's a much better thing for you. Same thing with a grantee. If we can get those elected officials or those other senior staffers, city manager that may oversee your department but really doesn't get involved, that's great.
Workforce development groups is that go hand in hand. I mean, you have your economic development, but then you would also have great opportunities for your workforce development to work hand in hand for the creation of an FTZ and an operation thereof, because there are a lot of jobs that are created with an FTZ that's positive, and they're good paying jobs too. What about the regulatory affairs type thing? Are there going to be anything talked about at the conference regarding the hot buttons legislatively or regulatory wise?
Oh, absolutely. We have a very robust legislative and advocacy agenda, both at the NAFTZ, but also keeping a pulse again on what's going on within trade, right? And so that's something that is first and foremost top of our list is being able to work with. You'll hear from our advocacy teams. We have advocacy working groups within our larger advocacy framework that are keeping a pulse on issues that are affecting manufacturing, issues that are affecting distribution, issues that are affecting trade as a whole. We'll also have certainly, the big buzzwords now used to be nearshoring, now it's friendshoring. So we'll also be having delegations from one of our sister associations that will also be at the event as well from Latin America. So you'll have an opportunity to hear from those folks as well. But certainly advocacy, first and foremost, on keeping a pulse on what's going on legislatively is key. And we work very closely with our government affairs advisors who will also be presenting information on the latest and the greatest and what NAFTZ has been doing on the Hill. Jeff and I can both tell you, we were just on the Hill last week, as a matter of fact. So we'll be giving updates on everything we've been working on. And we'll also, the conference actually will just come off our annual virtual fly-ins that we'll be holding legislatively at the end of August.
So what that means, folks, again, to our listeners, if you're in the compliance area and you're looking at an FTZ or there's talk about it, or you're actually using an FTZ, this is something you need to know what's going on. You need to know what support your company may need to provide to step up, because don't just assume that the association is going to do it and you reap the benefits. You got to get involved. So with this and all that, Trey, let me ask this question, is that when you're talking to senior leadership of a company and on, FTZs like this and all that, what is it that you're looking at them to say, here are the questions you need to ask maybe, and they can maybe then get a taste of what they should be doing when they attend the conference? What is it that they should be looking for?
Well, a lot of it will depend on where they are in the process, right? If they are a company that is reviewing the FTZ program, I would tell them that the interaction that you can have, that fellowship part of it, right? The whole interaction that you get from just hanging out with other people that are doing what you want to do is very important. I mentioned the fundamentals already, but I mean, it's really an element of looking for peers and, going across with companies that are experienced and long-standing FTZ operators and new folks. And, if you're somebody that's new to a senior management role and the FTZs have come under your purview and you're trying to figure out how to spell FTZ, again, it's a great opportunity. But really the big benefit is not just the educational sessions, which are great. And there's going to be something that you will absolutely need to know as you grow your company's program. But it is that whole, camaraderie that you can build with other companies. And, every once in a while, if you can dodge Trey, the consultants out there trying to sell you something. But, in the element of it, it really is that whole element of I can talk to every one of the consultants, right? Even if we're all going to give you a sales pitch, I got one spot, man, I can meet them all. And I can at least determine which ones I like. I always say you should be, looking at the bald ones, but, either way, it's that element of, you can meet every service provider, all the software people that are involved. You can meet them all, right? I mean, it is really God, this can sound so corny, and I'll apologize to Shannon now. The one-stop shop, right? You show up at the event and I can meet people who are in the business, people who have gone through what I've gone through, or people that can help me move forward as an executive. And I think the value to that in a leadership role can't be counted for sure.
And Trey, you just talked about the other thing that we also do at the NAFTZ has a mentor-mentee program that we also roll out and we work with. So it gives people you have the opportunity to sign up as a mentor and you have opportunity to sign up as a mentee. And so you have the opportunity to connect with those folks also while you're at the conference. So that's obviously a concerted effort to make sure people have a chance to pair up. But you also have, to Trey's point, you can learn cross industry. So just because you may be in the automotive industry, you still can learn a thing or two from from somebody who may be in textiles and apparel, because something they may be doing operationally may translate over to your world. And so that's the other thing, the real big benefit of networking with all the different groups, because the NAFTZ really does cross virtually every industry.
While they're talking about networking and connecting with other folks, Andy, I think it was on the first Simply Trade podcast that I was on with you and Shannon, and you asked me what I was relatively new at the time, and you asked me what I loved about NAFTZ so far, and I can tell you it stands true to this day, and that is the culture of our organization. When anybody walks into the room at annual conference, many rooms, the welcoming nature of our members is absolutely terrific. You will, like Trey was saying and Shannon was saying, you have that opportunity to talk with all of these different folks. And guess what? They want to talk to you too, even if they haven't met you before, right? It's just a very welcoming and inclusive group. It doesn't matter if companies may be competitors on the street. When they come together at our conference, everyone is there to help and educate each other. And I know one of the places where I hear a lot of feedback from members about what they love about conference is during our roundtable sessions. So towards the end of the second day, we give folks that share common responsibilities within the FTZ world that opportunity to sit down and just talk with other people that do what they do every day for a couple of hours. So whether you're a grantee, a user operator, or in the petroleum industry, we have time set aside so that those folks can come together and talk about common interests and actually what they're doing every day. But you don't have to worry about, if you haven't been before, you're going to be on the outside and trying to figure out, who do I talk to? I've seen time and time again that if there's somebody that's standing off to the side, members just going over there, can I help you? Can I introduce you to people? It's just a wonderful, welcoming environment, and everybody can feel comfortable attending our conferences.
Well, the old adage of iron sharpens iron, and that's where, I mean, Trey, to your point, when you were saying the executives come in and they're going to be able to meet and develop relationships with other, senior leadership, which is good, but all the way down. I mean, it goes from top down to that whole scenario there. So yeah, developing the relationships. The one thing I wasn't aware of, Shannon, as you mentioned, is the mentorship. That is something, folks, man, I'm telling you, that is phenomenal. From a standpoint that as you're in the midst of something, I don't know where to go, or I've gotten this far and now I need to figure out, what's my next step. To have somebody that's been through it and guide you along, man, that just that helps a lot. So I think that's fantastic. So all said and done, all right. So let's talk about all right. You've sold me on it. I'm interested. Where do I go? How do I sign up for this?
The easiest place to go is our website, www.naftz.org. And then you'll see a big banner right there that says FTZs and all that jazz. And it will take you to our info page. Of course, it's under the events section of our website as well. So naftz.org, simple as that. And then you'll be able to find your way to all the information that you need to have to register and reserve a room even at the Sheraton there, where we've got a terrific room rate of just $199 for the conference too.
Yeah, for New Orleans and down on the Canal Street, that's a good price. That's a real good price, actually. So that said, I guess what would be, let's say, maybe some of the top three things that you would, if I'm going to attend, what would be the top three things you would recommend for somebody to either seek out or do while you're at the conference there?
It's usually good to make an action plan for yourself, because it is, just a couple of days and you've got a lot crammed into a couple of days. So I would say plan out your process and your events that you would like to see. And in that program, also take a look at all of our fun stuff like the 5K and other things that we have going on.
Shannon, how about you? What would be your recommendations?
I would say you get the pulse on trade by listening to what's going on. You're going to hear from our government partners, which there are going to be a lot of them down there. So this is the opportunity to talk with them, pull them aside, get some also insights in addition to what they're talking about publicly. CBP also will have a booth there. So if you're having challenges with ACE, obviously that's the system of record for both import and export. So if you're having some challenges, utilize that. And then also, our sponsors and our exhibitors. We have a great exhibit hall. We have lots of great people that are down there. We couldn't put the conference on without them, and you have the opportunity to go one-on-one with them.
Yeah, if we're talking about the top three things, I'm going to go back to what I just said, and that is meeting other people in the FTZ world and what they do. It's a great opportunity because if you're in the FTZ world, I know a lot of people have no idea what you're talking about in terms of your friends and family that aren't necessarily engaged with it. And it's just wonderful to have that opportunity to sit down with other folks that do what you do every day and just have a conversation about it. So I would say take full advantage of those networking opportunities that we have there, whether it's at our breaks and our receptions and lunches. Meet as many people as you can, build that personal network so that you can help each other out. As I said, we've got just such a tremendous history of members helping members. And I'd say, make sure you jump right into the middle of that.
Well, I would say, let me add something there, is that one of the things, especially if you were in charge of the compliance arena there, if one of the things you need to be looking at is how you've got to develop the skills on how to translate the complexity of, let's say, an FTZ or the import-export business into language that your senior executives and your peers can understand, because everybody's not going to understand, what you're doing, but, translate the things that are going on so that they can understand the benefits of it or any support that you need. In the midst of that, when you go to a conference, go to every single exhibitor. Just find out what they're doing. See what's going on. You may not need them right then, but in this industry, it seems like there's a turnover. You may get a promotion. You may get to another company. And all of a sudden, just like Shannon said earlier, you may be in automotive and now all of a sudden you're in the textile industry or a different industry. And knowing who's out there, what they provide, I guess that's one of the things that, and Trey, I'm going to come back to you on this one, is that you obviously are a service provider, but you're also, so knowledgeable in the industry. When you're out there, you're not trying to sign somebody to a contract in there. You're just trying to answer their questions and I guess, educate them a little bit, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you'll find that of all of our service providers. We don't have the used car salesman running around wanting to sell you the latest model. We're there at this event as members of the NAFTZ and abiding by what our responsibility is as a member, meaning we're there to answer some questions. And, in a lot of cases, look, if it's a very complicated question, you may end up with some business cards and going, hey, we probably need to talk about this a little further. But our job is to really sit there, answer questions, make you feel welcome in the association. And I would love to tell you, yeah, it's just me. I'm the only one. No, our entire roster of service providers are that welcoming at the event.
Well, I will say, folks, you guys are great. NAFTZ is a great organization. It's well worth checking out, but I would also say it's well worth getting involved with. I would assume that you have, not assume, I just know, you have different committees that are focused on different aspects. You don't have to lead a committee or whatever, but you should get involved in some committees. And if you are a member, of leadership in a company, you should have some of your folks involved, especially from an economic development, from a regulatory affairs perspective, and all those different things that are going on.
Well, and Andy, that's a really important point. And I can tell you, I've been a member of the NAFTZ for 29 years. It'll be 30 years next year. And I can tell you that absolutely you need to get involved, because as we progress and as we're working on these advocacy efforts, it's important to have everybody's voice heard. And that's the only way we can be successful as an organization. And, likewise, when we're talking about being able to talk to all the exhibitors and the folks that are down there that can offer different services and a variety of different things, the same holds true for those service providers. Don't overlook the NAFTZ. This is an opportunity to be in front, as I said, of folks who cross virtually every industry you can think of. So you have decision makers in the room. You have folks who can take things back to the decision makers. So, get out there and sponsor or get out there and exhibit. We'd love to have you.
You know, Shannon, that is a phenomenal feat. 29 years. And of course, you're only 25 years old. So
Exactly.
I don't know how you got that one off.
Exactly. I'm so glad you recognize that.
All right, folks, listen, I would love to keep on talking, but we need to wrap this up. I will say NAFTZ, Jeff, tell me the dates again. September what?
September 8th through 11th at the Sheraton on Canal right there in downtown New Orleans.
All righty. And with all of that to say, Trey, Shannon, Jeff, thank you so much for being on our show. And folks, I'm telling you, it's worth checking out. NAFTZ.org. And there you go.
Got it.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.